Yeah, so I thought about, thanks a lot for the introductions, that we would start with our own introductions, also so you know where we come from and why we think it's a topic we can speak to and something we have an opinion on. Maybe you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thanks everybody for coming out. I know there's a brunch, so I guess you really want to be here. We appreciate it. I'm Rami. I'm an independent game developer. I started back in 2010 as a professional. I dropped out of my university, which I cannot recommend. But I started a game studio, which I can recommend, at least back then. I ran that studio for about 10 years. Made a whole bunch of games, a bunch of them award-winning, critically well-received, commercially well-received. In 2020, I shut down the studio, and since then I've been helping other studios figure out how to exist in the games industry. The other thing I do is I help studios around the world, especially in places where there's not as big of a games industry. I help those studios, level the playing field and get access to the same opportunities that people in the West or people in the US might have. So those are kind of my two main things.
So yeah, my name is Dino. I'm mostly known for have created Played-It, and Played-It is the company behind Limbo and Insight. I started that company 17 years ago, and that's where I went indie. Most people don't know what I did before, but I was actually working for another company as game designer, coder. Yeah, that was actually the thing I did. And that's kind of where I started my journey in games. I mean, I came from tech, and I remember going to games for something that was a true challenge for me. And yeah.
It's funny, I never made that transition because I was straight out of school. So for me, it's hard to compare because the only job I had before this was I sold computers at a media market. That was my one job before that, and then I went straight into running a company and making indie games. So I'm always a little curious how that experience is different, but I guess we'll get to that for this chat.
Yeah, so I'm really happy for it because I managed to experience a dysfunctional games company, and it was not a AAA company. I mean, when we were making those games, we were saying to ourselves it was AAA. It was not, but it was. I mean, I got to experience like dysfunctional game design, dysfunctional direction, dysfunctional management, and that was some of the things that set me up for when I was creating Played-It, how I wanted it to be, how I wanted it to be for the employees, how I wanted it to be run and led, and the feeling of being there, and also just trying to avoid all the culprits you can fall in.
I think we do have that. Just hearing you talk about it, I do think we have that in common. Like, you start a company with a mission, right? Like, there has to be a goal or a purpose. For you, it was, this sucks, we can do better. For me, it was, this was 2009 for me, 2008, 2009. AAA games at that point were very focused on narrative. And I was a annoying little kid. And so me and my co-founder back in the day said, we want to make just straight up gameplay games, right? And kind of the opposite of the direction you all went. You went very narrative and gameplay infused.
I feel it was the same. I mean, at that point, all games were becoming more colors, louder. If you saw any Microsoft trailers, it was just like, explosion counter. Mm-hmm. Everything was really loud. So kind of what we did with Limbo was just going the opposite direction, just going more focused, like more into the experience, more immersion.
Yeah, we went more explosions. We added explosions to everything back at Vlambeer. But I think the point is the mission, right? Like, you wanted to make a better, healthier environment for people to work and make these more focused games. We just wanted to we felt like there was something missing, sort of like the arcade spirit of games, and we decided to make that. But I think without a mission, it's really hard to start anything. It's fun. Like, we didn't really have any business goals. Like, we just wanted to be known because we were two kids dropping out of school Nobody knew about us. Nobody cared about us. So for us, our first goal was just like, how do you video game studio?
Yeah. So I don't know what the age group is in here, but the fun thing about the motivation for us starting was that it was actually not possible to do an indie games company before we did. Because before you had download, which came in around 2005-06, where I started to play it. Before that, you were going to a CD, and the CD was minimum $50, $60. And then you had a certain amount of content, and you had the distribution and everything. So indie was not possible before Steam. So Steam was the kind of kicker of, now we can do it ourselves.
Yeah, for our generation, at least for our generation, because you had shareware and all that stuff before that, but I think Steam really blew the lid off of that. Because I think, and this is something that we're also seeing now, is, there's always this space in which things consolidate. And that's kind of what happened in AAA, right? Like, when I was growing up, you had like Commander Keen, and like all those shareware games, and then those companies got bigger and bigger and bigger. And they couldn't really compete with them anymore coming up from the bottom. They controlled distribution, those systems were big and expensive and slow. And then Steam came up, and I think we were just inside that range. Xbox Live indie games, Xbox Live Arcade, Steam, all those things came up. And then after that, a number of the studios grew, and then mobile came up, and that opened up a new space for a lot of people. And I think it kind of stayed that way for a while. Like VR got at it. That was kind of like a big thing. I think web games, Facebook games was a thing for a little bit. I think we've kind of ran into a weird spot with the industry now, like personally.
Yeah, but I mean, when you talked, I thought about there was a turbulent time, and there was some opportunities that arose, and now we have turbulent times again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you think about the current turbulent times?
Oh God, shit.
Can I just say that I checked the other day that when we released Limbo, there was like 250 releases that year, 2010, and last year's on Steam. Last year there was 14,000 releases on Steam.
Yeah, it's like now it's like 200. Like what was a year is now a week. Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah, I don't know. Industry is in a weird spot. It's not a good spot. I think we've kind of ran into the situation where, every time we saw a jump in the industry, I think it was always attached to something, right? Steam coming up, mobile coming up, App Store, VR, whatever system, distribution method, new way of play, technology is becoming available. Twitch becoming a thing led to roguelikes, right? And to deck builder games and like games that are repeatable. It led to Battle Royale, and then Battle Royale became its own thing, and that took off. And then Battle Royale turned into 50,000 other genres. So now we have Fall Guys, and yesterday at the public pitch we had Chop Chop Guys, and like there's all these guys games now. It's its own genre. But like every time something happens in the industry, it's because there is a technology or an opportunity or an economic incentive to do something. Like people, I think people often think that we are like ahead of the market, and then the market catches up with us. But like, as a romantic indie, I want to believe that's true. But like the reality is, even in indie, you see people have to go where opportunity is, right? We're filling in holes in the ecosystem. I think I realized that with Twitch, like when roguelikes became a thing, I'm like, oh, that makes sense because marketing got harder, there were more and more games, you need people to find a way to find your game, and the easiest way to do that was all these Twitch streamers. And these Twitch streamers would play the game more if they could play it over and over again. So, I mean, you must have had a fun time with that, making one-go narrative games.
Yeah, I don't think Twitch ever has helped us, and I don't think it also didn't make it worse. It was like you can just not leverage it. Can I just go back to something you said, talking about AAA? In these turbulent times, and I agree with you, that the industry is in a weird spot. I'm sad to admit that it's a bad spot because I think there's always opportunity where there's something bad. So I think there must be opportunity somewhere. But where do you think it's most safe to work right now? Safe in quotations, like in the AAA or in the indie space?
As a farmer, I don't think it's safe in games right now, mate. Like I like that's the thing, right? Like it's a weird time. Like money is in a weird spot. The industry is in a weird spot. AAA, we chased realism for 15 years as an industry, and now we're at the ceiling. So now what? Like, games are, millions to make? Tens of millions, hundreds of millions? You don't earn more. People don't want to pay more. And then at the same time, the audience has been taught that games are free. Fortnite is free. Roblox is free. Minecraft is cheap. Like, who pays $70 for a game? And then we're stuck in a spot where not only do you have to make a $70 game, $70 is not enough to sustain it, because after launch, people want updates and new content and all that stuff, which costs more money.
But that has been the same all the way along.
Yeah, it's been this way
changed
for like 5 to 10 years now.
Yeah.
I think we're running into the wall, because the needs keep going up. What people want keeps going up. Costs are not going up. Like, nobody wants to charge more for a game because nobody wants to pay more for a game. So now you're seeing all this nonsense with, like, buy the AAA game for $70 and then $30 for the limited edition, which gets you one weird item in the game and then also microtransactions. And even with that, companies are falling over.
But I feel you're maybe talking mostly about AAA with that, because I think being indie is another playing field. I mean, you always say, right, if you don't like the game, play something else. And I feel a bit that's what indie is, because the whole realism chase has always been there.
Yeah.
And it's been the AAA companies chasing that. And I never understood it. I always felt it was stupid, because the realism is not fun. Reality is not fun. Shopping groceries is not fun. I mean, you play games.
Yeah.
And I think as an indie company, because you cannot compete in realism, then you have to find out what's your unique edge on the industry. And if you can find that, you do reasonably well. And I feel that really good indie games still find their niche. I mean, it's getting harder, because I think I know a lot of indie games that are really good, that are not finding an audience at the moment, that would have found those audiences. And I always said that, Limbo and Inside are niche games. Yeah. We just sell to the whole world, and then the niche becomes fairly big.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, but it's not like there hasn't been a race in indie games. When you think about it, when I was starting, there were no boutique publishers, right? Devolver Digital, one of their first signed games was one of mine, Serious Sam: The Random Encounter. And there was no such thing as somebody giving you 100K, 200K, 500K for an indie game. Well, nowadays, I see teams starting and they're asking for 700,000. I'm like, whoa. Like, that's not how, like, I started with $10,000 games. Me, JW, noodles, like duck noodles that were delicious, but not sustainable. But the reality is just like the bar keeps going up, and right now we're at a point where even the bar for indie is high. Like, it's not.
The bar for indie has gotten incredibly high.
It's very high.
Yeah.
Like, and you're seeing it even like cheap games nowadays. You're still looking at somebody like putting 3, 4, 5 years into it with like pretty good tools, because like the tools that exist now, like Photon for multiplayer, or like the stuff you're working on, or Unity, or Unreal, or any of those middleware tools, they didn't exist. You wanted to do something, do it yourself, right?
But it's also fun because, their motto and our motto in Coherence kind of is, living the playing field. You want to give people all the standard good tools to do stuff, which is great, yay, but then you're also part of the playing field. And you kind of have to play with everybody else that is in that level playing field. And for me, I think it's cool because you can compete with AAA companies, right? There was, there's been a Battlefield going on forever. And now this new game came that with 3 guys or 5 guys. Wasn't it even for this region? Battle.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't know where it is. Is that from here? I don't know if that's from here. I don't think it's from here.
Okay, but it's like, competing with Battlefield.
Yeah.
They just cut down graphics, playing 250 people, one map. And I think that's amazing that you can do that at the moment. I think you can have always been able to do that after downloadable games became a thing.
Right.
And I think that's also something you can do in the future. You can take any big AAA game and, as you tried, get more gameplay, dial back on the realism, and there's places where it's like, you don't get a lot of return for your investment in rendering.
No. So I think that's kind of where we are. We're in a weird spot. I think the bar has gone too high. And I think that's also part of what you're seeing in the industry at large now. Like, there's just, people call it a collapse. It's not really a collapse, is it? Like, I don't know, like, it's more of a constriction. Like, we went too big. Like, we did an Icarus, went too close to the sun. And now a lot of stuff is crashing down. I mean, there's also a lot of asshole business going on. Like, let's be honest. There's a lot of, like, just money nonsense going on, like people trying to get their shareholder value up for no reason but for it to go up. And you can see the cultural differences between, you know, like the US and stuff happening in Japan. Like you can see the difference culturally, where retention is a lot bigger. But you also see, like, really in the games industry, keeping talent, keeping that retention, keeping the people, it makes a huge difference. And I think that's one advantage indie studios have, is that generally it's a fairly small core of people with a team around it. But that team stays together. And if you look at all the best games of the last few years, you're looking at Baldur's Gate. That's a team that's been making the same game for like 20 plus years. So they're really good at it. You look at Alan Wake, that's Remedy Games. Like, core team has been that same team for years. That's an advantage that I think indies have that they're not really aware of, is that the longer you keep going, the better you get at it, to a really remarkable degree. Like, you're seeing teams like, you know, like look at Hades or Bastion or anything like that. That's one studio doing one thing for 15 years. And now you hear a narrator and you're like, ah, yeah, okay, right? You don't need anything else. You just look at the art style, you hear the narration, you're like, yep, that's them. And they nail that stuff every time. They can make a roguelike, an action roguelike, feel narratively meaningful. That's that consistency that I think AAA is losing against indie right now. And this is a weird thing, right? Because we're supposed to be the risky ones. We're supposed, like, being indie is supposed to be the thing where you're looking and you're like, oh yeah, we're going to take some risks. It might not work out.
But that's always the case with the first game. And it also was with
Sure.
Bastion. Like, there was really a lot of risk involved. It was.
It was, yeah. Yeah, but I think more like overall, like I think if you look at, like, I'm working with a lot of developers, right? Like, so I do, for the people who don't know what I do consultancy, and I work with developers that want to go indie, are trying to figure out how to survive as an indie. And lately, I've been getting a lot of AAA people, because they're saying, like, listen, the deal with working for a large company is that it's more stable than working for yourself as an independent. So you get more stability. In exchange, you don't have the opportunity of earning as much. Now, as an indie, you might not necessarily earn that much, but the deal for AAA is the risk goes up to here and the opportunity goes up to here. And they're saying what's happening now is the risk of working at AAA is actually going up, because all of these weird incentives, like getting the shareholder value up, all these layoffs happening, teams getting outsourced or like moved to entirely different countries. Keeping a job in AAA is not a guarantee in any way, shape, or form.
I also think a big difference in working for AAA and indie is that in AAA you don't have the control. You are living under the control of, as you say, like shareholder value, which I personally hate as an argument, but it is apparently an argument for some. And you have no control. I know so many people that have worked on canceled projects, get moved around internally, and sometimes in the end, get fired. And these days, there's a lot of those stories where indie, yeah, it's tough, but you have mostly the control of what you're doing. You can decide what you spend the time on, you decide what you focus on. Maybe the money you take in dictates a bit, but you're also the one that decides which money you take. If it's publisher money, investor money, which publisher.
Yeah, or whether to not do the project. That's also a choice you can make. Yeah. No, but that's the thing. I think the contract in AAA is kind of broken, and I think a lot of people, they kind of end up idealizing indie. They look at it and they're like, oh my God, it's going to be amazing. And then I sit down with all these AAA developers and I explain to them, like, okay, this is what you're signing up for. And they're like, oh my God. But the thing is, that because the contract is broken in AAA, in indie right now, you have basically the same risk. Like taking a AAA job, you could be out of money soon. Taking an indie job, you could be out of money.
You are already out of money.
Yeah,
so
but then in indie, like you said, you have control, but you also have opportunity. If you launch an indie game and it does moderately well, right? Like let's say like you get to like the top 25% of earners on Steam or something. Yeah, you're not making a ton of money, but you're making more than enough money to make another one, right? And you get that sustainability, and you can build on that, and then you make the next one, and if that earns a little extra, now you're earning a little more, and you do that 3-4 times, you can actually build something fairly large.
If you look at Clay, like his first game sucked. It was, it was a game. It was not a good game, right?
Yeah.
But he improved every time. Like I think even the art style has kept the same. And now, the games are ridiculously good, and the company does ridiculously good.
Yeah.
So it's a start, right?
Yeah.
He just made enough that he could earn to make the next game.
And I think that's what a lot of people misunderstand. I think a lot of people think of indie as like a hit-driven business, but it's more of an endurance business. Like it's a persistence business. And,
yeah. Like when you stop working, that's when you fail. If you continue, you will eventually. I mean, I say that now. I also know some people that's been indie for 25 years or whatever and has never hit anything, but they're still happy.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you can continue to do it, you're in a good spot. But the difference is you can see whether it's going to end. I think that's what's attracting people to indie right now or to independent development is you can see your money run out. That's terrifying, but also right? Well, with firings, like I hear people who wake up and learn on Reddit that they've been fired. They boot up Reddit for their morning coffee and they're like, oh, 900 layoffs at my company. And they go and they check and they try to log into their email and it's like, nope, you can't log in. And it's like, oh shit. Like, I get messages like this, like at this point, like daily in my.
Sorry for laughing. It's just holy crap.
It's so ridiculous, right? It's like people are learning that there are. I read a tweet this morning that somebody was interviewing at a AAA, and during the interview there was a round of layoffs. Like they're hiring during a layoff. I'm like, then what are you? What is happening, right? And it's money. It's money. It's like trying to get people back into the office. It's firing people that are working remote. It's moving companies from the U.S. where everything's expensive to parts of Europe or Asia. Like it's all that. But my God, what is like? If your choices are I don't know when I'm going to get screwed or I do know when I'm going to get screwed, everybody would pick that second one, right?
Can I just say I have this stupid anecdote with the company I worked on before starting Playdead. The company went bankrupt, and we were like it was a pretty nice workplace because we were we had a cantina and there was food in the cantina, and there was a guy delivering the food, and on the way out, he learned that the company was going bankrupt and they would not get money, and we were just sitting and eating. And this was just the delivery guy, He got called up by the company who were delivering food, and they said, "Take the food back." So he came back in the door, and everybody was just sitting with the food in their mouth, and he was like, "Hey guys,
I got to bring the food.
I got to take your food back," And people were like, he started eating quicker, and he was just the delivery guy, right? That got the instruction to take the food back, and they could not even reuse it. It was.
I don't. At that point, it's borderline petty, but I get it.
Yeah, it was a bit petty, but it was also like, they would not get money for like maybe that month or something.
Yeah.
I mean, it was not my decision. I was just eating the food, but I was like such a cringe moment I'll never forget in my life. Having food in my mouth and learning that he had to take my food.
You couldn't pay for the sandwich. Yeah.
yeah. Somebody
Oh.
So those things happened, and.
But I think that's it, right? Like that's why I think a lot of people are interested in independent development now, and that's also why I have a lot of people who want to go indie. But I do think a lot of people think of game development as just one thing. I don't think it is. Like I think mobile development, VR development, AA development, indie development, AAA development, I think they're completely different businesses, right? Completely different ways of doing business, of looking at the world. Like when you made that transition, like what was sort of like your first, because like I'm talking to a lot of people doing what you did, which is they were in larger companies, they're basically just angry, and they want to start something of their own. Like what was like the first thing where you're like, oh shit, this is more complicated than I thought?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I don't think I realized what I was getting myself into when we started, because we were just sitting and, created a small budget. And I remember we had, Arndt, my partner at that point, he made some drawings, and we had a movie. And we had at that point, it was early on, we had 30 publishers writing us. They saw the movie online, so we just did a road trip to the UK and visited 10 publishers. And it was a good experience for most of the part. But we came to edvice, and they were just horrible. They're like, what's the budget? We don't know. We just have some pictures. And I can see now looking back, we were so fucking amateurs. It was of course, we had done no research at all.
Right.
We were more like, you contacted us, which I also think was fair enough.
Yeah.
You contacted us, so we just came with what we have.
Right.
We showed the trailer, and they stopped us and is this the trailer we already saw online? And it's 1 minute long, literally. So it was. So yeah, I mean, from that point on, the whole experience was the learning experience, learning how we could make this like a game from the vision and some pictures.
I like what you said there, because it's true, right? Like a lot of people, when they're in prototyping or pre-vertical slice, they think they're making the game, but you're not really. That's not the game development yet, right? I keep having to explain that to independent developers. No, stop trying to think of your prototype as the game. It's a potentially a throwaway thing to just prove that it works, right? You don't go and make a sketch and they go no, we're continuing from this sketch. You do the sketch and they go this is good, and then you do proper paint. Right?
But there's also the company building versus the game building.
Mm-hmm.
And when I meet indie companies now, I try to make them think about building a company. But when people did that to me, I was like, fuck you, man, we just need to get this fucking game out, The first game or the first hit, as you say, coming to the point where you can sustain yourself doing what you like, that is the hardest part. So you are just focused on that, you don't know what you're doing afterwards. You don't know what games is coming out. You're just trying to get that game out.
Yeah.
And I can see that now when I talk with other indies, they're not even on the radar, and I don't know if you can think about it. Maybe it's too calculated if you already think about what your company is going to be, because it's, yeah.
Maybe, but the problem with that, this is one thing I realized 7 or 8 years ago, is I was talking to some indies, and they were starting out, and Vlambeer was 4 years old at that point, or 5 years old at that point. You know what the biggest difference is between Vlambeer and that developer I was talking to? That developer was competing with Vlambeer. That's the thing. That was the thing that blew my mind. I suddenly realized, oh my God, the difference between when we started and people starting now is that they're competing with us. And we've been doing this for 15 years. So we do know our budgets. We do know our timelines. We do know what a team can do. We have experience. And you're competing with that. So the bar, even for pitching, the bar has gone up, right? 5 years ago, you could come in with a pitch, with a basic prototype. Well, 7 years ago, you could come in with a pitch, a basic prototype, and a bunch of mock-ups and go hey, budget timeline, this is what we need. Nowadays, publishers are looking for vertical slices, complete and finished, right? Full budget timelines, just part of the team already hired, and that's before they start talking about contracts. I think you do need to know this kind of stuff if you're going independent now. And you do need to make that switch, that mindset switch that I'm seeing with AAAs a lot. They think that they have leadership skills, but they have management skills, right? They learn how to manage groups of people. I get senior artists or lead artists coming to me and saying oh yeah, we're going to start a company, and I'm like, great, who's creative director? And they're like, well, it's going to be me. I'm like, great, what's the plan? What's the goal? And they're like, well, figuring it out, I have some drawings, and I'm like, no, that's art. You're doing art direction. I need you to go up in the process and take a zoomed out look. What are we making? Why are we making it? Why does it matter? Right? I'm guessing Limbo probably came together very similarly. You started from a place, and then you work your way to okay, this is kind of what it is, what it means.
Yeah, that was a vision.
Yeah.
But I agree. I see that also. I mean, I haven't personally worked in a AAA ever. That's a full disclaimer. But I have a lot of friends, and I talk to a lot that done. And also now, because I do angel investing, I get a lot of pitches, and I get a lot of pitches of people that comes from AAA, and they want to go indie. And you can just see it's a completely different mindset. They start another place. They are competing, like they're competing with the old company. They're trying to do new AAA in a new way, with realism and big storylines, and haven't really thought about gameplay. And also gameplay, as you say, like I mean, I don't believe so much in design documents, because I think gameplay needs to be gameplay. It needs to be played.
Yeah.
The gameplay needs to be in prototypes and vertical slices, and that's also why publishers want those things, because you cannot write it down. And AAA company, they come from another school, right? They come from big design documents. They think you can write it down. Yep. You write the whole story down, what's happening and so on. There's not like, they haven't understood it.
I mean, I think that I'm going to touch on this in my talk later today. But like, I think what that is it's there's sort of economic incentives to alignment, right? Getting a team aligned, getting them all pointing in the same direction. If you're a really big company, you have 120 people, 200 people, 400 people, getting 100 of them to go that way and 200 of them to go that way means you're going to have to figure out how to get these 100 over there, right? And doing that while the train is already on the way, the longer it takes for you to figure out that they're not moving in the same direction, the more expensive it is to correct it, right? So they spend a lot of time on like getting everything written out, everything like drawn out, everything defined, prototype, like I don't know, like everything on every layer. And I see that when AAA producers move into indie, they really want to get stuff all figured out before they start going. But if you're a team of 12, the cost of 5 people going that way and 7 people going that way it's not that big.
No, and it's almost like you have to do it as an indie company. You have to explore new routes.
Yep.
That's your strength over a big company. That's how you compete, right? That you try stupid stuff that work or don't work.
If you can write it down with certainty before you begin, it's not interesting, right? Like that's just the same everybody else is doing.
Yeah, and also I'm falling victim to this also. All the gameplay I have in my head is always amazing.
It's so good.
It's so good.
So good.
It's so good. Until it comes down right. and that's, that's the shit test, right? You throw something at the wall, and it's cool. I mean, it's cool. Everybody has ideas. Everybody's a game designer in a game company.
Yeah.
Luckily or sadly. And all the ideas sounds really cool when you pitch them. But I mean, for them to be really good when you sit down, being executed in a game, work for a long time, have some progression and all that, that's a process. That's a long road of execution.
That translation is such a big, like, I think everybody, like, because our brain is really good at filling in blanks. I remember at Vlambeer, we had a prototype where it was like, we thought nobody had ever done a good grappling hook. Like just a grappling hook. We were like, fuck it, we're gonna fix the grappling hook. You know how we're gonna fix it? Guns. So we said, okay, we'll do a grappling hook, and then wherever you grapple, there's also a gun, and you can shoot from the grappling hook point. Sounded awesome, like, oh yeah, you go into a room, you use the grappling hook, and then you shoot. And we built a prototype. All everybody ever did was just throw the grappling hook, stand in a safe spot, throw the grappling hook, and then shoot all the enemies in the next room. And we're like, oh, yeah, actually, that makes sense, I guess. And so then we just went like, okay, whatever, like next thing. But like every game idea sounds good. You can fighter jet, and there's like a dragon, and you're fighting a dragon with your fighter jet, and it's like, oh yeah, hell yeah, like your brain can fill it in. And they play it, and you're like, oh, fighter jets always have to move forward, while dragons can. Actually, this is not interesting at all.
Yeah, but that's the thing, right? And you can afford it, and you have to do it in an indie company. And I think that mindset change is so important. There's a lot of people who ask me, from the games I've been on, what did you cut? Because they think that all of the games were finished almost from the start, and that they would have been bigger with just gameplay that didn't work. There's just been so many directions, so many points where things were iterated on and maybe got cut late or something. And that's the strength of an indie company, and something the big companies luckily can never replicate. I mean, they can do nice graphics, much better graphics than any indie company, and they can do better sound design and so on. But I think, like on the gameplay sense, and I think that's what's. I mean, for me, I really love about being in this industry, is that you can sit down and you can compete with these game companies, the big ones, with being 1 person, 10 person, and you can, at all levels.
I think so. I mean, look at the biggest games right now. Like, a lot of them are independent games. Like, a Lethal Company is like, that's a game that went viral over a ladder falling on somebody's head and making a funny bonk sound. Like, that was it. And then the internet loved it, and, you know, what was it? A single developer, like, made $40,000 gazillion or something. It's like, that doesn't happen, right? Like, that's so rare that it happens to developers.
Also think about Coffee Stain.
Yeah, Coffee Stain. Yeah, that's a crazy
that
story.
Empire, which it is now, is built on top of Goat Simulator.
Yeah.
Like, that is crazy.
Funny rag.
Which other industry has something built on top of a Goat Simulator?
Yeah.
Not the herding, not farming business.
Yeah.
No, but it's an empire. It's like people which actually had skills and talents building something that is super stupid, that becomes a meme, that suddenly becomes, you know, a publisher, becomes Valheim. I know they didn't do Valheim, but they spotted Valheim, right?
Yeah.
They have Factorio, or what's it next one? Not Factorio.
The other one.
The other one.
Yeah.
Satisfactory.
That's the one. Thank you.
Thank you. Exactly.
But that's the thing, right? Like, I think same thing with Coffee Stain, with like what we were talking about before. I think indie studios do a better job of retaining their talent in general. Not always. There's always exceptions. Like, indie teams break up like their boy bands. They fall apart. They quit. They run out of money. Like, whatever it is, like, it happens. But like, in general, these little groups of people that work together tend to stick together for very long times because they're not controlled by outside forces that say, oh, you two like working together, nah, you're gone, right? So I think that there is sort of a unique side to the indie scene. It's just not necessarily as romantic or as beautiful or as effortless as people make it seem or as people think it is. You know, it's a hard space to be in. Like, let's be honest. Like, it's not.
It is
easy
super
place.
hard, and I think it's easier to idolize, and it's easy for us also because we made it somewhat with our first games. But I mean, we struggled in the start, and we both know a lot of indies, and they all struggle a lot. But I still prefer it. I mean, I still prefer that type of struggle personally. For me personally, just being hired and being put on a certain task and then being moved to something else. As you say, like, the people around you, you have no control if there's idiots in your team. You have no control of what you're working on. You cannot guarantee it's going to be a good game. I mean, you can dislike the game all the way through and still work on some parts of it that you enjoy and find your job enjoyable. But I think in the end it comes a lot down to your personal preference, because I think some people, as you say, like that the security and also like the systems, because as you said before, the indies, there's a lack of systems, there's a lack of leadership, there's a lack of so many things. Like, it's bonkers sometimes what we into, and in bigger companies there are systems for everything. You know, you go in, you have your salary negotiation that is probably.
I'm also jealous of, like, you know, playtesting facilities.
Exactly.
Like, oh my god, like, look at a AAA and they go like, and then you see their stuff and they're like eye tracking and everything, and I'm gonna go, I would like that. That sounds great. Like a QA department. Ooh, yeah, give me that. Like, that would be great. No way I can get it though. Like, independent, like, it's.
But I still think, for me personally, like, the risk associated, where I have the control, and you are running out, and it is very stressful, and has been very stressful. I've been running out of money in all of my companies, and most of them several times, where we were either at 0 or below 0 before we got some deal closed or something, and that's very, very stressful. I had, like, tax people coming in and learning me that I need to pay the tax before I pay my people. Because I said to them, I didn't pay you because I paid people instead, and they're like, oh, that's not how it works.
Yeah, that's the wrong way around.
And it is obviously stressful. You also have a big responsibility.
Yeah.
I mean, Played It, when I left, we were 28. Jumpship, when we were at the top, we were 28. In Coherence, where we are now, we are 28. 28 is maybe my limit. I don't know.
28 is a nice limit.
It's a nice.
I don't know. Like, there's this thing that I've noticed in studios where there's really sort of like set growing patterns, and they all come from like 7 or multiples. So you go 7, 14, 28, 48, and like, it actually, because I think. So my theory on this, sorry, this is a complete detour, but my theory on this is that it has to do with the capacity of a producer. if you have a producer, most producers can handle about 7 people if there's no proper systems, processes to support them. So if you hire a second producer, now you're 8, but you have space for 6 more. So then studios grow to 14, and then, you know, adding an extra producer, now you have 2 producers, so really you want somebody above that. So now you have space for 4 producers, so you go to 28. And like every time I see it, it just makes me laugh, because it's very consistent.
That's a fun observation. I didn't think about that.
Nice.
But
That's something useful.
Yeah. No, but what I wanted to also say about it is just that you have the responsibility. I feel you know, you are taking people on this wild, risky ride, and everybody comes along if they want or not. I always felt it was really important to kind of always inform people of the state of the company so they know what they're getting into.
Right.
And yeah, and I think sometimes you want to make the choice that's best for yourself, but you cannot only think about yourself. You have to like think about how the whole company is going to navigate.
But I think that's why I like indie personally, is because in general, for most indies, the incentives of leadership and management are aligned with the incentives of the studio. They want to make a good game because good games make money. Period. Right? There's no shareholder bullshit. There's no like restructuring, alignment, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's just like the people in charge of the company want to make good games because good games will allow them to buy sandwiches for the people working there. And there's no like weird stuff. Like, if you stay transparent and you stay open and you stay honest with your team about where you are in the process, how things are going, then that is a very safe sort of environment, I think. Well, AAA right now, I think what a lot of people are scared of is that they don't know what their bosses are thinking and what the bosses are going to do to them. And that's, to me, that sounds terrifying. I've never done it, but it sounds terrifying.
Yeah, I hate the thought. Also the thought that, you know, a lot of the layoffs now is because of the market. You know, money is more expensive. Everybody cannot just loan money as they could before. So there's a lot of firings happening, just as you say, like on the shareholder level. You know, we cut workforce so we can keep our value up. So you get cut because of the industry, because of something that is nobody had control over in the company or right above. And I think that's scary.
What is sort of like because you've now done multiple companies, multiple places. What's like if you're starting a new thing, what's like the first thing you make sure you get right?
Oh shit!
'Cause you've done this a few times now, so there must be something where you sit down and you go, okay, gonna start a thing. What's the first thing you check?
But I think it's just important to have a vision or a mission for what you're going to do, and it needs to be strong. Because I feel like I would never just start a company to start a company. Oh, well, I mean, my goal has never been indie to be indie.
Right.
Apparently when I started out, it was not even called indie. We didn't know. That was defined kind of later. We started a company around an idea. Yeah. And that's what it's been since. You know, Playdate was started around Limbo. Somerville was started. Jumpseat was started around Somerville, and now Coherence is started around Coherence. So I've always looked to have like a strong vision of what I want to do, and then I formed the company and tried to typecast. Again, typecasting maybe is the second thing. Finding people that align with that vision, starting to whenever there's a vision or idea going on, starting to find people that, you know, you talk to them and you elaborate on the idea, and they're like, yeah. What about this? What about this? And then you get to spaces where you weren't before, and you get to think. Right. These are the people we want to have on. And
so it's goal first, then people.
Yeah, goal first, then people, and then the first people, like the senior people, the ones that can help you drive it, the ones that are, as I said, like not yes men, but understands the vision and has similar ideas in that direction that can help pull this forward.
But they don't necessarily agree with you. They agree on the vision, but they don't agree with you.
No, I mean, if they are more talented than me, which is not very hard, I don't mind if they don't agree with me.
Yeah, I do the hire smarter people than you rule is always it always applies. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I think I do a very similar thing. I first figure out what I want to achieve, then I figure out who I want to work with, and then I make sure that the people I want to work with are not people that are like me.
Yeah, and I think actually, and again, this is my personal anecdotal view. I think if you start just saying, I want to be indie, but you're not clear on what you want to do, and you start trying to figure it out afterwards, I think you lost. I'm not fully sure, but this is what I've seen. And I even remember I have this small anecdote of in Playdead between Limbo and Insight. There was a small team that was really interested in mobile, and we had a bigger team, and not everybody was maybe used for the new project. So for Insight, and then we said, okay, what about you go down? I can't remember how much time we gave them, and you create something, a really, really cool thing. And this was really, really talented people. And they were stoked. They were really like, there was 2011, so it was a really good point for mobile still. Yeah. And they came up with nothing. They came up with, there was like, because there was nobody there with a big vision or something. They're just like, we got time. We can make a mobile game. We can go anywhere.
Also, how can we be like a thing that already exists? It's just a bad goal.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be indie. What does indie like?
Yeah.
What is indie? What does it like? We're not going to have a discussion right now because
it's a long one.
I don't care about the discussion, but like if you're going to have a vision, it should be something that isn't there, right?
Yeah.
Instead of like, can we be like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we have 5 minutes left. Maybe you can talk about like final piece of advice. I think this we're talking about is kind of also my advice. Like if you want to go indie, I think, not having that as a goal, I think is an important thing. I really think you need to. I mean, you can be in a AAA company, but as soon as you get like that idea that you wake up and think about every night, and you talk with people about it, and they all think it's cool, and you kind of get your inner core of people. That's when you can make the jump. I don't think you can make the jump just to have the lifestyle.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. I think for me, a lot of it. When I work with people making the jump into indie, I always tell them like the main things you want to figure out is you want to define where you want to go, right? And it doesn't really matter how you get there. It's just we want to go in that direction. So I think that aligns with what you said with goals, right? I think the other thing I then talk about a lot is incentives. Like how are you going to structure this in such a way that going in that direction makes the most sense, right? How do you get the right people? How do you build the structure of the hierarchies of people, right? Like if you're going to be somebody making a game that's very art heavy, and I talk to the team and it's like, who's the creative director? And they're like, the narrative person. I'm like, but why? They're like, well, they were first. I'm like, good. That's not how this works. Like they were first is not a reason. Like legacy is not a reason, right? Like things have to have intent. Like
that's also a fun point because you said before you are friends coming together. It is really hard to say to your friend that he's not really talented or he needs to do something else.
Yeah.
I mean, it a lot of times. I mean, I think it's tough if you start as friends because you cannot expect to leave as friends.
Right.
I mean, I was not previously friends with like the partners I had. Yeah. I met during this, and with some of them we also got really, really close. Right. But I mean, there is a chance. I mean, Playdead was not a good ending for.
I mean, I have a solution for that one. Me and JW never liked each other. We just ended up working together because both of us dropped out of school at the same time. And we're like, I couldn't start things.
Sounds like a weird reason.
And well, it was the only person I could work with. I couldn't start things. He couldn't finish things. And we were like, hey, this might work. Yeah, I don't like you, but what else am I going to do with my life? So that's how Vlambeer started. And it turned out to like have so many benefits because we were very happy being very honest with each other. Like if something was bad, I would tell him. We argued for days, and then at some point we realized, we need responsibilities. He's in charge of this, I'm in charge of that. If we get stuck arguing about something, that's how we make the decision. I think that's sort of like definition of responsibility, of incentives, of goals. Like that's the things you want to figure out. And then games, like you're going to make games anyway. If you're a game developer, it's natural. Like you want to make stuff. You're a creative, right? So.
But I don't know if that's a given. I mean, a lot of people ask, how do I get into the game industry? And that's also, what we are talking a bit about today. But it's like, I usually just say, just start. I mean, just start developing a game. And you can talk about it. As I said, like the ideas sound really cool in your head. And it's also, you can also live a long way from that, but it's kind of your loaning time because at one point you need to show more for yourself or for the team or so on. So you have to get things down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so just start developing, like especially if you're solo, just like
I think that's it, right? Like on the team side, on the business side, you got to have intention. You got to say, like, okay, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it. You got to be able to explain it. On the game side, forget about that. Yeah. Just start going in a direction and see what the fuck happens, and then hopefully at some point you can align the two parts. And if that happens, then you're golden. Man, I should put that in my talk. That's good.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. But yeah, I think this was the end of what we're going to talk about. We are taking questions if there's.
Yes. Thank you very much. That was really engaging. We have time for 1 or 2 questions for the audience. One here, to the left.
There's luckily some hands today.
Hi.
Hi.
Got a couple of questions. I guess I'll get with one of them. My name's Eli. I'm a game designer, also a dreamer, a romantic a little bit. Also about the fighter jets versus dragons. I prototyped that, and I can confirm it's very tough to get going. About the topic of every previous opportunity being tied to some technological breakthrough or some new technology or some resource, etc. I believe there are things like this nowadays, like the boom of AI, the boom of Unreal Engine 5, all stuff like that. As a game designer, I'm not very eligible to talk about it. Not a very tech guy. But also, one thing I've been told is an opportunity, and I kind of see as an opportunity, is the current state of AAA or quote-unquote quadruple A games. They are not very successful, and of course, things like more bigger version things like Baldur's Gate and smaller things like Palworld or Little Company are getting some pretty great traction. So my question here might be whether or not it's a good way to leverage when you're talking to people, when you're trying to start your own thing, or is it a bad thing because like every other indie developer goes and says, well, we will be like the next Larry and the next Palworld, etc. Thank you.
I think that's kind of, it speaks to one of the things we were talking about earlier. If you want to define a goal, it's really important that you define it on your own terms. So you don't define it less as a I want to be like that. You can say like there is not this, I want to be that, right? Like that works, which is I think a little bit where you're playing right now.
Yeah.
Is this doesn't exist? Let's make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, this is my personal view, but I think it's a tough mindset if you already start as an indie to kind of copy some AAA, because you would likely not do a better Baldur's Gate game, I guess. I mean, they've done it for, as you said, like so many years.
Yeah, 30.
Yeah, 30. You have to find something else.
Yeah.
I'll try to make one quick example here. Like, for example, Warcraft universe sucks right now. I want to make a better one, like a good old Blizzard. Like,
right.
Just an example.
So try to figure out what that means to you. What does good old Blizzard mean? Like, what was so special about that is interesting to you? And then figure out, because games have the fingerprint of their creator, right? So the choices they made back then were because back then they made sense. Right now, you, with the knowledge of all those games that exist, will make different choices than them because we're in a different time, you're a different person. So the question is, what interested you about those games? And then not like the characters were cool. You know, like go really in depth. Like what was the fundamental truth of these games that was attractive to you? How does that fit now? If something comes out of that makes sense, chase that. If it doesn't, fuck it, next thing.
I'm also a huge fan of looking into, exactly that, but from a feeling perspective. What was the feeling you got from those old games? And a lot of that has gone lost. Like with realism and with a lot of things, we lost some of the feelings. And I think that's also where an indie, you can kind of, if you can capture the same feeling, you have something, from the original. That doesn't need to cost money. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for cheap things with a big impact.
Okay, so less antagonizing the current state of affairs and more like positive and analytic thinking about what made it great in the first place.
No, it's not that. It's feeling. Like Dino said, it's about feeling. What is the feeling you're trying to... Like, it's really easy to get too stuck in the science too quickly. Start with a feeling, with a thing, with a thing you can barely imagine holding in your hand. Start with that. If you start going into science and analytics and data and market stuff, you're doing it like the AAA developers. And that's fine, but you're not going to beat a AAA developer at being AAA.
Fair. Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. I think the rest of the questions will have to wait to the end of the session because we have no more time left. But I am more than sure that our speakers will be really happy to answer all of them. So
we will.
Please give a great round of applause to our speakers.